Welcome back to the Deeply Rested podcast. I am so happy that you're here, and I'm thrilled to share today's episode with you. But before I do, I want to give a shout out to Roanne B., who left a phenomenal review, 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and I wanted to share with you what she said. So Roanne says, I've listened to the first 4 podcasts on the Deeply Rested series, and I'm already looking forward to future episodes. I see parts of myself in each one and have learned so much, both in ways that I've directly connected to and about ideas I've never even thought of. Maegan is a great listener, asks great questions of her guests, and follows up to move each conversation deeper. I love how she connects in a very real way to her guests. Each episode feels like a personal conversation between good friends. Just these first few episodes have given me so much to think about. Highly recommend this podcast. Wow. Roanne, thank you so much for your kind words. The feedback is really helpful for me as we develop this podcast. And even more importantly, your reviews on Apple Podcasts really matter in the first season of this show. So if you're loving the podcast so far, and you have a few minutes to spare, I would be so grateful, eternally grateful, if you could pop over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review, just share 1 or 2 sentences about what you're loving about the show so far. It's great feedback for me and my team, and it will help us share this podcast far and wide, which means many more episodes to come in the future. Roanne, thank you for your review, and thank you to anyone who shares a review in the future. So grateful. Okay. Let's focus on today's Deeply Rested episode. Today's guest is my dear friend, Deepshikha Sairam. And Deepshikha is here to share a very personal journey. This conversation was inspired earlier this year, actually, when Deepshikha had me on her podcast, which is called Journey Home to Self. And we talked about my journey as an entrepreneur, but more specifically, my personal journey going through huge life and professional transitions. We talk about this in terms of liminal spaces and being in the void. Deepshikha and I love to talk about what it's like to be deep in the void when you know that it's time to surrender what you thought you knew was true about your life and about your work because you can feel something deeper is calling to you. Oh, but it requires that something deeper requires stepping into the void, surrendering and stepping into the unknown before we get to know exactly where we're headed. And that space, that void space, it's deep, it's transformational, it's challenging, and it's one of my absolute favorite things to talk about. So today, Deepshikha is joining me to share her journey through these liminal spaces, her experiences of living inside of the void, and she shared so much profound depth and wisdom. I know you're going to love this conversation. Just to tell you a little bit more about Dee, she is a writer and the founder of the Muse Master, a creative writing community designed to help writers tap into their full creative potential. Focusing on nervous system health, the Muse Master aims to provide education and trauma-informed practices that empower writers to overcome procrastination, move past their inner critic, and get back into their creative flow. Deepshikha lives in New Jersey with her family and is working on her very own memoir. Dee is a phenomenal human being and a really generous podcast guest. So relax, take a deep breath, and prepare to dive into the depths as you learn about Deepshikha and her journey. Enjoy. Welcome to Deeply Rested, the podcast that helps people doing good work in the world take incredibly good care of themselves. I'm your host, retired therapist and disillusioned business coach, Maegan Megginson. I'm on a mission to help people like you unlearn the rules that keep you trapped in self-doubt so that you can recover from burnout and finally become deeply rested. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe to this podcast and join our weekly newsletter at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. Now, it's time for the show. Hi, Deepshikha. Welcome to the Deeply Rested podcast.
Oh my God. I am so excited to be here. I love the name. I just already feel deeply rested, which I didn't before. So,
Well, it's first thing in the morning for me. It's maybe a early afternoon for you. So, what a compliment. You're here, you're feeling deeply rested already. Like only magical things are happening from this point forward.
totally, totally. I absolutely love the name, Megan. I think you're doing something
Oh,
incredible with this
mm, thank
podcast.
you. I hope so. I feel really good about it. It's like
Yay.
the easiest thing that I'm doing in my business right now, which is often a sign for me that, like, yes,
Mm,
I want to follow the ease. I want to follow the ease. And
follow the
sitting here
ease.
talking with you, sharing this conversation will feel very easy. So,
Yay.
yeah, I'm following the ease. Here it is.
That needs to be a t-shirt, by the way. Follow the ease.
Follow the ease. Bumper
Bumper
sticker.
sticker,
Yeah,
everything.
hydro flask sticker, all of the okay. Merch coming 2025. I'm just kidding. I'm not making merch. Okay, but we digress because we are here today to talk about you and talk about your journey as a business owner. I can't wait to dive in. I want to give so Deepshikha and I we met back in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
I think was
Mm-hmm.
it? We met in 2020. We were in a mastermind together and we have since become dear friends and our journeys have been parallel in so many unexpected beautiful ways. And I know that you have a story that the listeners of this podcast are going to resonate with in such a deep, meaningful way. Let's get to it.
Let's
Sound
get to
good?
it. Yeah. I'm
Okay,
here
let's
for
do it.
it.
Okay, great. For everyone who hasn't been a part of our friendship since 2020, over the last 4 years of our friendship, we've both been on a pretty wild personal journey, exploring spirituality, personal healing. And what we've noticed with each other is that as our personal work unfolds, our businesses evolve pretty rapidly alongside our personal growth. And today, Deepshikha, I want to talk about your journey as a human, as a business owner. I want to talk about how your personal work has led to the creation of the soul aligned business that you are sharing with the world today and all of the bumps and bruises that you've gotten along the way. How's that sound to you?
Sounds perfect.
Great. Well, let's rewind
Yeah.
back to the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey. Tell us about why you first went into business for yourself and what was the first business you created?
Yeah. Gosh, that was long back. So I don't know. It was like 2016, 2017. So long back. Megan, I was a stay at home mom. I had two kids under the age of 5. And anybody who's been in that situation would know that that's hard. And at that time, my identity was completely enmeshed with
Mm.
that being of a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And not that there's anything wrong with it. I loved being a mom, but I didn't want to be just a mom. You know, I had a
Mm.
successful corporate career before that. I knew that I had desires. I knew that I had a purpose. And a question that I've always asked, and I still ask myself, and I think I've always been asking this question is who am I? Like, who am I?
Mm.
And at that time, I didn't know. I was so enmeshed with being a mom, being a wife, being a daughter, being a sister, that I didn't know where Deepshikha started. And the
Mm.
answer to me at that time led to me creating my own business. I thought that was the answer
Mm-hmm.
to finding my own identity, finding the
Mm-hmm.
Deepshikha that was hiding somewhere. And of course, an ancillary part of that was also because I wanted to make money. I wanted to make my own money. I wanted to have my own
Mm-hmm.
financial independence. And, it was the silliest thing. You know how sometimes when you go to get a pedicure and they ask you, do you want the extra 10-minute massage? And you
Mm-hmm.
really want it because every part of your body is hurting, but you
Mm-hmm.
also feel so guilty about that extra $10.
Mm.
I just wanted that $10 extra worth
Mm.
massage. That's all
Mm-hmm.
I wanted. That's what I wanted to do was being able to go to a pedicure place and say, yeah, I want the massage. And so I started my business. My first iteration of the business was a social media company. So I used to create content for brands. I was specifically into Facebook and Instagram. That was the first iteration. And very quickly, as I entered the online business space, my goal became just accumulating more money, more media mentions, more email list subscribers, more followers.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and of course, I can only see this in hindsight now. I didn't know it back then, but I was equating my identity with the identity of my business. So when my business
Mhm.
made more money, I felt really good about myself. I felt, oh my God, I'm so
Mhm.
deserving of the success. I'm so worthy.
Mhm.
And when I had hard months, as any new entrepreneur has, I was so down on myself. I was so critical of myself. And
Mhm.
I was once again enmeshed with the identity of the business that I had created. There was no boundary between me and my business. I started as a social media marketing company, but I pivoted to business coaching. That is something that I was doing when we met back in 2020.
Mhm.
And it was a very successful endeavor. It was my clients were getting great results. I was top of my game. I was having fun. I say that in quotes, having fun, because now when I
Mhm.
go back and read my journals, I was miserable because I was
Mhm.
always focused on what wasn't there. I was always focused on what was
Mhm.
next. And I don't know how it happened. I don't know how I went from, oh, I just want the extra $10 worth of massage to I want $1 million business. But everyone
Mhm.
around me was also telling me that I could do it. Like I could totally build a
Mhm.
$1 million business. Like it was so easy for me to build a $1 million business within the next 3 years. And I did not question, I did not stop or pause to question how. How? I
Mhm.
didn't stop to question that the people who were telling me that I could build this $1 million business were mostly white, mostly, male, or, single women, or women who had chosen not to have kids. And all there's nothing wrong with it, but their 24 hours were not similar to my 24 hours. So there
Mhm.
was really something wrong with what I was taking in. And the question that I was not asking was, how can I do this? How will it be possible for
Mhm.
me? The question I was always asking myself, what is wrong with me that I'm not able to do this?
Mhm. 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 So much to unpack here. Thank you for sharing. I want to come back in a minute to what happened when you entered the online business space. But first, I'm finding myself very curious to
Mhm.
know what you did in the corporate world before you had kids.
Oh, yeah. So this was long before I had my kids. I used to work for Bank of America. I was a learning and
Mm.
development manager. So I used to do leadership trainings for, the entire executive team. And fun fact, I quit my job at Bank of America to write a book.
Oh, really?
I did, yes.
What kind of book?
I was at that time working on a chick lit kind of a fiction, humorous
Uh,
book. It was erotic. It was called One Night Stand, and it was funny, and
oh.
it was based on friendships and love and sex and all
Mm.
of that. But I never got to finish it.
Because?
Well, let's pause on that question, and I'll bring it towards the end of this conversation.
Ooh, okay. Look at you dangling a carrot in front of my face. I'm like, tell me more about this unfinished erotic novel. I'm listening. Okay, great. Well, that's so I didn't know that about you. You
Hmm.
were in the corporate world. I love that from the very beginning of your work, you're drawn to this work supporting other leaders, other big thinkers. You've been a guide from the moment you came out of the womb in one way or another. So you started Bank of America, you have a whole corporate career in that space. You leave that space to write a book. You're going to come back later and tell us, why you didn't finish it. Then you become a mom,
Hmm.
and you're so excited to become a mom. And you celebrate that you're becoming a mother. It's a part of your identity that you love, but early on in your motherhood journey that it's not your primary identity being a
Hmm.
mom. It's an important part of your identity, but you could feel the multifaceted way your soul was wanting to come in to the world. Your soul was knocking on the door saying, "Hey, we have more hats." Okay? Like we're going to wear the motherhood hat, but we also want to wear the business owner hat. We also want to wear the independent hat. There's all of these ways that you're wanting to come forward. And then I imagine your subconscious starts looking for an in, right? You get this idea, I want to work for myself. And at the time, 2016, 2017, online business is really
Booming.
coming on the scene, right? Coming in hot, like work from home, huge movement for moms to do their own thing, working online, and you find an opportunity for yourself. So you step into that space. And I love this clarity that when you stepped into the space, like your desires, your why am I doing this? They were very clear, crystal clear. And then you stepped into the space and the slope got slippery. Right? And all of a sudden, like, whoa, you're starting to act in some ways out of alignment with what your soul was asking you to do for yourself in the first place. So I want to talk about that for just a moment before we move forward. This conversation isn't about understanding cult behavior, but I think it's important to mention, especially back in 2016 and the early days, even into 2020, 2021, so much of the behavior we were seeing, especially in the female identified online business space, had a real culty vibe about it, right? It's like the cult of personality. We're kind of drawn in to learn from these experts with these big personalities and these big lessons, the lessons that often sound like, you can do what I did, here's how.
Right.
And what I hear in your story, Deepshikha, is that you got sucked into that in the way most of us do.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't want to shit on my, business successes or whatever, I created, because it took a lot of hard work and I was fully into it. And I absolutely loved what I did when I was business coaching my clients. I absolutely loved each and every one of my clients, and I loved my work. I do want to honor that part of myself, because it was me who created a multi 6-figure business from zero, from being a stay-at-home mom to doing that. It was the same me, right? But I what you're saying is right about the fact that the soul is asking you for something. And I totally believe, and I didn't do it before, but now I do, that we do the best that we can with the resources that we have, right? So if I knew better, I would have done better. But at that time, I did not have the knowledge, maturity to understand that my self-worth was not tied to the success of my business. And that was a theme in my life. I have always felt unworthy. I felt that I was not deserving of love, of success, of friendships, of loyalty, of anything. So that was my core wound that my soul wanted me to heal. And the only way that I believe it could have done that was through the success of my business, when I could really get at the top and see that, holy shit, I've made so much money, more money than anyone in my family ever made. I'm the only entrepreneur in my entire family. And look how I feel. I describe
those journals.
Right. I describe that in the memoir that I'm writing as this 100-pound monkey on my back that keeps getting heavier and heavier and hissing in my ear, like, you're still unworthy. Look at you, little shit. Like, you're still undeserving. And so that was a way for me to really come face to face with that monkey and say that, oh, I gotta get this monkey off my back. And that was when, I know you will talk about this later, but that was when the misalignment started feeling so true in my body.
Yeah, let's zoom into this just a little bit more, because I think there's a learning lesson here that's going to be a huge aha for a lot of people listening. And it's that we can talk about the dysfunction of the online business space specifically without maligning or villainizing anyone who's, partaking in the pyramid. And for the most part, almost everyone I've met in the online business world has really good intentions. But we're all spun up in this way of existing and this way of modeling what other people are doing that takes us away from our connection to our own soul. And like you're saying, pokes and prods on all of the bruises of our core wounds. So I think this is, for me, what's so important about this chapter of your journey is that there were ways in which you were abandoning yourself.
100%.
Right. It's like because other people were telling you, hey, I know you just wanted to pay for the premium pedicure, but actually what you need is $1 million
Yeah,
business.
you can totally
Right.
do this. Like I couldn't see it
You
in
can totally
myself,
do it.
but people could see it in me and with all good intentions.
Right.
Like I love the people that I
All
work with,
intentions.
most of them. I loved them, my
Yeah.
coaches and everyone. Most of them had good intentions. Some of them not so much. But again, we have all kinds of apples.
Right.
You can do this. I did it. You can totally do this.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
my learning, Megan, has been that as long as, and this is for everything, okay? This is for your business. This is for all the anti-aging products out there. This is for any
mm-hmm.
doctor advice. As long as we're looking for answers outside of ourselves, we will be taken further away from ourselves. As long
That's
as we
right.
are totally dependent. Now, that's another thing. If I want to find an answer that I can't, I want a guide. I want Megan to guide me into finding that answer. But if I am putting my power in your hands and I'm telling you, I don't know anything
Mm-hmm,
about my life and my business, Megan, you
mm-hmm,
tell me who I
mm-hmm,
am. That's when I'm
mm-hmm.
giving my power totally to someone
Oh,
else. And that'll
that's right.
always lead in an abandonment of the self.
And sometimes it sounds like tell me who I am, but
Mhm.
more often it sounds like tell me how to succeed.
Yeah.
This is what I hear from people all the time. Okay, well, what should I do next? I want a 7-figure business. How should I get there? Right? These are all thinly veiled questions because what you're really asking is what Deepshikha is saying, which is who am I?
Yeah.
And why am I here? If you're listening and you're like, "Oh, there's like something resonates in this conversation." My invitation to you is to think about places in your life, in your business right now, where you're looking to someone else to tell you what to do next. You're looking to someone else to tell you what it means to be happy, what it means to be successful, to give you a roadmap for how to go from point A to point Z. Just notice with curiosity, where are you handing your agency and your inner authority to somebody else? Okay, so make a note of that. Let's come back to Deepshikha's story because here you are. You've created this success, right? You are successful in the online business space. You are a success. People know you. People are paying you high ticket fees, premium fees to work with you. It's going well. People are saying, hey, you could take this even further. You're killing it. Keep going. But you start to feel the internal rub. You start to feel the whispers of the soul saying to you, you've gotten a little off course. Hey, listen up. I need you to do something different. So tell me about that process for you, the process of like really coming to terms with the fact that something needed to change.
Mhm. Okay. So, first of all, we can only talk about this process in hindsight, right? Like, because when
Of
you're
course.
in it, we don't see it. And I think people like you and me, Megan, who are really soul business owners, we're soul people. We are here because we know we have a purpose. We want to live fulfilling, meaningful lives. We're always going to feel those inklings that, oh, there's something wrong. This doesn't feel right. Everything is fine, but
Mhm.
something feels off. To me, and this may not seem like the same analogy to everyone else, but to me, it felt like that I'd left a glass of sparkling water on my counter for way too long. It had
Mm.
lost all its fizz. So while I
Mhm.
was going through the emotions and while I was launching my programs and making money and dealing with my clients and doing all the things, it just felt flat. Everything just felt
Mhm.
flat. It had lost the
Mhm.
fizz. I felt like my life had lost the fizz. And again, I was looking for answers outside of me. So I was going to the coach, I was going to psychics, I was going to mediums, I was meditating, I was doing all of that. And all of that is great and it works. But again, like you said, giving the agency to outside of you rather than listening to your soul. What are you saying? Like, what do you really want? It has also been defined to me by a lot of women as, a stale slice of pizza. Success
Mhm.
feels like a stale slice of pizza, or I don't know what's wrong, but everything feels fine, but I don't know why I'm so miserable. It can
Mhm.
feel different things. And there's an author that I really love. Her name is Maureen Murdoch. She wrote the book, The Heroine's Journey, and she talks about this in her book. And there's a quote from her, and she says that women find their way back to themselves by moving down into the depth of their being. And she calls it the initiation and descent to the goddess. So it feels like a crisis. It feels like something is
Mhm.
off. Feels like, you can't put your finger on it, but it feels something is off. But it actually is a descent into
Mhm.
the underworld. It's a descent into the void. It's the initiation that, oh, listen to your soul. So
Mhm.
that's what it felt like. I could use so many words to describe it. I felt burnt
Mhm.
out. I felt depressed. I
Mhm.
felt off. I
Mhm.
didn't feel like marketing my business anymore. I felt like I wanted to burn it down.
Yep.
I started to spend a lot of time in voluntary isolation. It
Mhm.
was so many things, but everything was
Mhm.
leading me to face the truth of my soul.
Mhm. Mm. And I just want to connect back to what you said a few minutes ago, that this is the moment on our spiritual journeys too, where all of our old wounds start rearing their heads in the most violent, intense way that they ever have before. So there's this discrepancy, right? From the outside, I look like I'm like, people are like, you're killing it, like you're so successful. How do you do what you do? You're so great. People are projecting a lot of stories onto you and onto your success. And you feel like you have to smile. Right? You feel like you have to be like, I know, I'm doing so great. Everything's going so great. But then you go home and you totally melt down inside and you're criticizing yourself and you're like drowning in fear and panic and like all of your old stories. You don't feel like you have community. You don't feel like you belong. And then I love all the labels you used, because six of one, half a dozen of the other. I'm burnt out. I'm depressed. I'm anxious.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm unhappy in my marriage. Where can we point the blame?
Right.
Right? Where can I, if I just like, oh, it's, if I just fix my business, then I'll feel better. If I just fix my marriage, then I'll feel better. Once my kids go to school, then I'll feel better. No, you're never going to feel better. I hate to break it to you, until you turn inward
Yeah.
and you say, okay, I really have to meet myself. So you got to the point in your journey where you knew, I have to meet myself. Tell me what happened then.
Yeah. And just, to add to everything that you said, that if you don't look at your soul and if you don't address that feeling of this resentment, this feeling of
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, the goddess is going to do it for you. Your soul is going to do it for you. Things are going to start breaking down. So health crisis,
Mm-hmm.
financial crisis, breaking up of a marriage or a relationship or losing an old friendship. Things are going to break down in your life because everything is like pointing towards what you need to
Mm-hmm.
look at. And so that's what
Mm-hmm.
started happening in my life. Things started breaking down. I did a launch that everything was spinning on that launch. My 7-figure business plan was all on that launch, and
Mm-hmm.
it failed very miserably. And it was a straw that broke the camel's back, because for me it was like, holy fuck, this is what failure looks like. Like, I'm worthless, I am
Mm-hmm.
nothing. And all that self-doubt and that inner critic was at its highest. It was just so loud in
Mhm.
my ear that I couldn't even comprehend that, oh, maybe it just means that I need to take a pause, I need to take a break. But
Mhm.
so, because I was not listening to that, oh, this water has totally gone flat. Instead of drinking it, maybe I should get a new bottle. I kept drinking it for a
Mhm.
couple of years and things started going down.
Mhm.
And that's when I decided, after taking a couple of months of break, that, oh, something needs to change. And, you and
Mhm.
I have talked about it on my podcast. That was when I
Mhm.
was in the void.
Mhm.
I knew that something had to change. I knew
Mhm.
that I had to change. I just didn't know what.
Right.
I just didn't know what would it change to, and what would my
Mhm.
life look like. I honestly didn't know what would I look like if I didn't have this
Yeah.
business. It took me so
Mhm.
long to come to terms with the
Mm.
fact that I was not my business, which was called Socially Groups. Balance sheet. I was not the profit and loss of Socially Group.
Mhm.
It took me a long time to make that that connection, which is
Yeah.
so wild. But yeah, so I was in that darkness, in that void. I was really knocking on the door of the underworld, and I was enveloped with that darkness.
Mm. We're about to spend a good chunk of time talking about the void, which is one of our favorite topics. And it can be a little scary, right? It can be a little bit scary, especially if you're thinking about this for the first time, if you can feel yourself knocking on the door to the void, to this liminal space. And it is scary. Let's be honest.
It's scary. It's the
Scary
scariest
to
thing.
go there. It's scary to be there. And also, every single person listening to this has the capacity to be with that fear. So I just want to say that. Like, if it feels scary, don't stop listening. It is scary, and you're really brave. You're really courageous, and we can all make it through the void, right? I see a lot of people get to this point in their journeys where they can really feel themselves knocking on the door of this liminal space. Because the reality is, when we realize that what we're doing is no longer aligned, we don't get to know what is aligned, right? There is a phase of the journey between where I am and where I'm meant to be. And that phase is called the void. It's a liminal phase where you don't know. You are surrendering, you are releasing what has been, and you have to do that before you get to know what is going to be. And that is really scary, but you can do it. I just want to say that because I see people in my work with business owners all the time. I see them walk up to the door. They're like knocking on the door. They're thinking about it, but then the fear overwhelms them. So they turn back around and double down on whatever they've been doing. I'm just going to double down on this
Right.
7-figure business plan, and I'm going to just go even harder on that next launch.
Right.
And then you're digging your own grave.
Yeah.
So, but we all have to make the choice, right? We're at that moment where we have to choose. Do I step into the void, or do I turn around and kind of double down on the way I have been living my life? You decided to step into the void. And I would love to hear you talk a little bit about what it's been like for you inside of the void. Hard to describe,
Right.
but if you can, paint a picture for us.
Yeah.
What's it like inside?
I do want to say that I don't think anyone knowingly steps into the void. I don't think we have the capacity to do that. It's the unknown, right? And nobody, we're not, as humans, we are meant to stay away from danger. So our nervous system is built in a way that we don't necessarily knowingly, the first time at least, don't step into the void knowingly that, oh, I am going to be in this unknown without knowing when I'm going to come out. So I don't think I stepped into it knowingly. I think I was very much pushed into it. And I also want to say that if you are someone who's like knocking at the door and you're like, no, I'm going to double down on something, that's fine too. My number one lesson, and we can talk about it more in detail later, is the void is unavoidable. You're gonna get into the void. You're gonna go into it kicking or screaming. You're gonna go into it with a lot of resistance, or you're gonna go into it with some surrender, right? So the first couple of times I went into it with a lot of resistance, with a lot of kicking and screaming, and with a full faith that, hey, I am spiritual as shit. I am spiritual as fuck. I know this shit. I meditate. I do my moon rituals. I'm gonna come out of it in like no time. And
famous last words.
Right. So that's what I thought. And, I'm going to talk about the void as if it's linear. It's not. It's a labyrinth, right? It is a labyrinth. And the only thing that I wish, and I think people did tell me, like my spiritual mentors did tell me, but I probably did not have the capacity to hear at that time. But I'm going to say it. Maybe it's not going to resonate today, but maybe it's going to resonate 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 6 months from now. Have a lot of grace for yourself. Have so much empathy and grace and self-compassion for yourself, because that's the only thing that you need. That's it. Like, it is hard. It's a death. It's really a death of all the things that are untrue. It was the death of the people person Deepshikha, the people pleasing Deepshikha, the Deepshikha that felt unworthy, the Deepshikha that felt she didn't belong, the Deepshikha that felt she doesn't have any value in this world. It's a death of all the things that we have taken on ourselves and we think that is who we are. So the void for me was really painful. I had to, layer by layer, Maegan, let go of all those false identities. I had to really come to face the fact that I am not my business. I am not this identity that I had created for myself. And, I had to come to face with a lot of childhood trauma that I had faced. And uncertainty of who am I without
Mm-hmm.
being a six-figure business owner. Who am I if
Mm-hmm.
people don't know me as Deepshikha? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Deepshikha, she's a rock star business coach. Who am
Mm-hmm.
I going to be? Like, what am I going to say to people when they ask me, what do you do? It's a lot of unshaming. It's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
letting go of these beliefs that we've created about ourselves. And as women, we believe in all kinds of shit, that our rage is something to be ashamed of, that we need to feel guilty about being a woman, about making money, about the clothes that we wear, about our weight, and all of that. And it was just a spiral of letting go of all that. And it really feels like stripping down. And the only thing that I can probably describe it as, if people have heard the myth of Inanna, when she goes into the underworld. Inanna was a Mesopotamian goddess of love, and she goes to visit her sister whose husband has died, and her sister is the queen of the underworld. And once she goes there, she has to go through these seven gates. And I'm just going to tell the quick version of the story. Please go and check it out.
Mm-hmm.
And at every gate, she has to let go of a piece of clothing. So her crown, her necklace, her robe, and everything. And at every gate, she says her name. I am Inanna, queen of blah, 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 la, 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 loved by all my people. And at the last gate, when she has to leave her cloak and be completely vulnerable and naked, all she says is, I am. I don't even know who I am. And then she dies. She's killed. And then
Mm-hmm.
she's in the underworld for 3 days and 3 nights. And then she's revived. And then she goes back up with a new identity. And that is really the journey. It is. It is
Mm-hmm.
not a surprise that all these strong female archetypes in our world have taken a journey to the cave. We say the cave. A lot of Mary Magdalene spent her life in a cave. A lot of Indian goddesses have been known to be in the cave for some time, sometimes 7 nights, sometimes 9 months. And it is a metaphor of that gestation period that we all go through
Mm-hmm.
to really come out as the powerful one.
Mm-hmm. Love the story. And I just want to honor for a moment all of the vulnerable things that you're sharing. Thank you.
You're
Every time I hear like new layers of your story, I learn new things about you, about myself. I think this is the power of us, I mean, people in general, but also business owners specifically, when we start getting more honest with each other about what's really happening behind the landing page, behind the email list, when we really start talking about how my life journey is interweaving with my business journey, like this is where we really start to learn and grow. And as I'm listening to you, I'm noticing, ways in which our experience of entering the void and being in the void share so many similarities and also so many differences. And that's important too, right? That everyone's journey through growth, through liminal spaces, it's going to look really different. Because for me, stepping into the void, it was a choice I had to make. I was very conscious that I was at a threshold and I had to choose. Are you going to step through or are you going to double? So for me, it's like it was a choice and there was a real awakening in making the choice. Now, if I would have said no to the choice, I probably would have been forced into it eventually. But I say, like, if you're really curious about this, just pause the conversation for a few minutes and just do a little reflection. Like, where am I right now? Am I in the void right now? Have things been stripped away from me and I'm like spiraling in the chaos? Or am I approaching the void? And I want to think about like how I enter that space. Like you have so much choice. You have so much agency in this process. And I completely agree with like there have been moments for me in the void that have been like dramatic and intense and like these deaths just one after another facing wounds. I have also been really surprised in my experience in the void how much stillness and silence there is for me and how uncomfortable that has been. There could be weeks where there's just nothing happening, and I just feel alone and it feels dark and it feels quiet and like that's the wound that I have to feel and face. That's the shadow that I have to meet. So the invitation is wide open for you to have whatever experience. in the void you need to have. The thing that I'm really resonating with in this conversation is that you need to have someone to talk to about it, right? Like a friend, a community, like someone where you can say, here is what's happening for me right now. And that no one tries to like fix it or solve it. They just witness you and your experience. You know, they're like, I can't help you, but I'm here with you. And I'm curious. I mean, I know we have had that with each other in the last year or so as we've been talking about this and getting to know more about one another's journeys. But did you feel like you had enough support when you were going through this season in the void? Tell us a bit about that.
Sure. I definitely want to address one more thing before I come to your question, Maegan, is that I'm so glad that you brought this point that our journeys can be so different. And I just cannot stress how important it is for us to understand that even though the feelings can be the same, the void can feel the same, but it can feel so different for people. And again, coming back to that grace and empathy is so important that, okay, maybe it might take me a little bit longer, or maybe I'm resisting it too much. Now, understanding that the first time I was being sent into the void, I didn't know fuck about void. Like I didn't know anything about this void. So I went kicking and screaming. Now when I feel the inklings of, oh, I'm going into the void, that's when I'm like, oh, I'm willingly stepping through. Right. So that was my first initiation ever, knowing that, oh, this feels heavy. This feels dark. And knowing that and understanding, talking about support, I had an amazing spiritual mentor who was with me and she supported me all throughout. And of course, I had a therapist. I had a couple of friends who had also gone through something similar. So I had a lot of support. Even then, so my spiritual mentor, when she and I would talk about this, and she would totally get it. And she would tell me her journey. And she would be like, Deepshikha, it took me 2 years. And for me, as soon as those 2 years were over, I was like, yes, 2 years are done.
I'm done.
I'm done. I'm going to get out of it now. And guess what?
Adorable.
It took me 4 years. Right? So everybody's journey is so different. And that was the bane of my existence, looking at people on Instagram and they would talk about the journey and they would be like, oh, but now I'm happy and I'm all healed and I'm in my second relationship or I've created this new business. And I'd be like, damn it, why me? What's wrong with me? So I was again back in the same. I had not learned my lesson, that the question was wrong. I was not asking the right question. I was asking the wrong question. I was not asking what's the lesson here, like what is here for me. Instead, I was asking what is wrong with me. So to your point, to answer your question, yes, I had a lot of support, but also I felt so lonely at certain times. I felt like I had lost so much of my community. And I did. I lose all of my community. I lost a lot of online friends.
Same.
And so I was alone, but I also had support at the same time.
That is so well said, Deepshikha, that this is my experience. This has been a through line in the experience of everyone I've talked to about this process, which is that you are going to lose a lot. And it fucking hurts. I'm not going to lie. I've lost internet friends. I've lost real life friends. I've lost family members. You know, it's like as we grow and evolve, we shed what no longer resonates with who we are. And there is a way in which like you will feel lonely in this process, but it doesn't mean you have to be alone. I love the way you're saying that. That yeah, there were moments when you felt really lonely. There was a lot of loss. There was a lot of grief. And you were really well supported at the same time. And that's the invitation I want to offer people listening. It's like, yeah, don't jump into the void with nobody who gets it. It's like, give yourself the gift of finding community, finding mentors, finding a good therapist, people who can just be there with you as you go through this hard process, and know that you're going to have to surrender a lot of things that you thought were meant for you that maybe just aren't meant for you anymore.
Yeah.
Oof, it's painful. But on the other side of it, so much richer, so much richer. Now, we were going to save this for a little while later, but it feels right to talk about it now, Dee, which is the way in which you said this earlier. The void's not a linear process. It's a labyrinth. And the reality is that once you kind of surrender to, okay, I'm a person in this lifetime who is doing deep work. the reality at that point is that you're going to be stepping in and out of the void for the rest of your life. It's like you step into the light, you do some work, and then you get the call to come back to the void, and you do some work there in the dark, and then you step back into the light, do some work there, and then you step. So it's in and out and in and out. What wisdom do you want to share with us about the impermanent nature of coming out of the void and how we can navigate with more grace, coming in and out, in and out?
This is going to sound harsh, but my biggest lesson from the void was do not half-ass your death.
Do not half-ass your death.
That was the biggest lesson for me, because I was half-assing my death. I was like, oh, I've done it. Like, I did the dark ritual, and I did the full moon ritual, and I did meditation for 30. I'm done. Like, I've done my therapy sessions, and I'm done. Now I should get back to it.
And I checked all the boxes.
We did the check. And again, nothing wrong with any of it. I do my tarot reading. I do my meditation. I do my rituals. All of that is amazing. It's good. But sometimes you have to die all the way through. And I can't tell you what that will look like for you. For me, what it meant was letting go of my business. Letting go of that identity that I had created that had now become enmeshed with the money that I was making.
Yeah. The identity enmeshed with the money, enmeshed with the newsletter list, right? All those metrics, all those numbers that you were talking about earlier.
Right. So for me, that's what that meant. And I think all of us, we pick one core lesson before we are born. We're like, this is the lesson I want to learn this lifetime. And I think so far for me has been my self-worth. And I've struggled with it throughout my life. And for me, that has been the biggest lesson. And I don't know, I'm 40 years old now, so maybe the second half of my life, there might be another lesson. It might be the same lesson, maybe with deeper layers of it. But for me, that was the thing that was kind of like it was the mother weed. It was a mother weed, and once I started pulling at it, all the things, the people pleasing, the boundaries, not feeling like I belong, not feeling like I deserve anything, all of those started to get loose.
Yeah, it's cute when we're like, I'm just going to change this one thing. I'm just no, you're not. Like, you're gonna start changing one thing, and then I love that mother weed imagery, and then it's gonna shake up everything that it touches. And let's celebrate that. Like, let's celebrate the chaotic, messy nature of this rebirth. Right? Birth is messy. Birth is violent. Birth is chaotic and intense.
Right.
And we celebrate it, right? Let's come together. Let's celebrate it.
Yeah. I also want to say we don't really give a thought that nothing really grows without some chaos and without the darkness. Like, even just look at the way plants grow. Look at the way a baby is born. Anything that grows or takes birth, there is some chaos, some mess, some darkness involved in it. And if we can think about that when we're thinking about being the void, it's very similar. The process is very similar. It is going to feel messy. It is going to feel chaotic. It is going to feel like a dark night of the soul, because it is. It is going to feel like a death, because it is. But, there is wholeness on the other side of it as well.
Well, I think the beauty is that as you go through the void, you learn that you've been whole the whole time, right? It's like, you realize, there was never a problem that needed to be solved. And it's hard. I say that lightly because until you're in it and feeling it, like, the brain can't make sense of that logic on its own. I just want to offer it up and really highlight what Dee is saying again, to say to those of you listening, you can do this. And yes, it's messy and hard and chaotic. And it's also beautiful. And you develop such a powerful, loving relationship with yourself, a clarity about your own voice, that all of a sudden you don't need to live life through this hyper-vigilant, I'm scared, what should I do next? Someone tell me the answer. You don't need that anymore, because you trust yourself so deeply, and that translates into the work that you do as a business owner. I want to talk briefly about living the question instead of seeking the answers. This is something that even if the whole void concept to you, listener, right now is just like, what kind of woo-woo bullshit are they talking about? Let's talk about a way in which you can live the question. And I think that's a nice way to ease into the waters of this type of personal work. Dee, tell us what
Yeah.
it means to live the question instead of seeking the answers.
Yeah, I read this quote in a book called The Covenant of Water, which is not a self-help book. It's not a spiritual book. It's a fiction book. And, this was a dialogue that a character says in the book. And this was early in the year, in, I think, January. And this was the time when I was really coming to terms with, I don't need to have a business anymore. Let's just let it go. What would my life look like if I don't have a business anymore? And I think what it really means for me was a full surrender, like complete surrender. And I thought that I had surrendered before. Again, it's like, it's cute. Like, I thought that I had surrendered, but I was always pushing for the answer, right? How can I make my business work? That was always at the back of my mind. How will I make my business work? What am I going to do with my life? Da, 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 da. But once I fully, completely surrender, is that, you know what? I don't know. Let's just let it go. And I think that was the moment when I started listening. So you asked me to kind of paint the picture for you for what void looks like. In the beginning, it looks like you're actually in a deep, dark cave. And it's scary because it's dark, it's unknown, you're stepping in shit. And you can hear the monsters screeching from all different places. And after a while, you just stop resisting everything. You stop like scratching the walls and getting out of your way, and you just stay there in the stillness. And that's when the monsters kind of go to sleep and you start hearing your own voice. And that's the kind of surrender, that's the kind of not pushing for the answers that I was experiencing. That what if I don't make it work? What if I don't even think about it and I just surrendered? And I'm a very pragmatic person, so I need to have lists. I need to still do like what I'm doing. And for me, Maegan, it really looked like sitting and not even listening to an audio meditation, but just sitting and really paying attention to my thoughts. And at first, it was so crazy. This is the first time I'm talking about it, actually. My brain would create, okay, you need to do this, you need to do this. Like maybe I should take a tarot reading course, random, okay? I should maybe do an EMDR. Oh, I should go on a plant medicine journey. There was like a list of things that I wanted to do because I was seeking the answer. How can I make this stop? How can I make this discomfort stop? And I was like, you know what, Deepshikha, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write all of this down. Because sometimes when we are also spiritual, we get in our own way and we feel like, oh, this is our intuition talking to us. My intuition is telling me that I should go and get in touch with the psychic and get the answers from her. And I definitely had the confusion going on in my mind. So I put everything down on a sheet of paper and I was like, I am not going to take action on it for a month. And if after a month I still feel like I need to take action on any of this, I will. But for a month, I'm just going to sit here and not do anything. The only thing that my soul was saying, and this is where, we'll come back to that first question you asked, was right. Like, right. Right. That was the whisper of my soul 4 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago, always. So that's exactly what I did. I just kept writing. And after about a week, I stopped hearing all those voices. And that was the time when I know, oh, now I fully surrendered. And suddenly I became okay. I became okay that maybe I won't have a business. Maybe I will probably have to go get a job. That's okay. Or maybe I'll be a stay-at-home mom who writes. And so again, like, not attaching myself to any of this, but being okay with not knowing where this is leading and being okay with not knowing. I think that's the part that was hardest, but also so required. And, everybody talks about surrender. I don't think you can quite describe it unless you feel it yourself. But it is, it's a complete giving up of any expectation that you have from this world.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have to have a follow-up conversation where we just dive deeper into surrender and what
Yeah.
it means as a business owner. And I actually say that I want to just name this because I know people are thinking it right now. We don't have time to get into it in this conversation, but there are real world constraints for a lot of people, right,
100%.
around surrendering, and I think about my own journey, and I'm the only person in my family who generates money.
Yeah.
So money is often like something we really have to have a strong relationship. We have to have a plan, right? Many people can't just be like, okay, I surrender. And so if that skeptical part of your brain is like, oh, well, she doesn't understand my situation. We hear you, we get it. Let's have a follow-up conversation about that later because it's so important.
Yeah.
But the core essence remains the same, right? That you can feel the quiet whisper of your soul saying, hey, let this go.
Yeah.
Hey, try this instead. Hey, just relax. You're safe. You're okay. And how do we gently and with so much grace and empathy start to trust that we know what's best for us and that we can follow our own intuitive guidance? That's at the core what so much of this process is about, of being in the void, of letting go what was working, because we know that there's something greater we're meant for. We know we're being called to show up in some different capacity. Okay, I want to talk about the work that you're doing now. You've been in it, like you said, you were in the depths, the darkness, the really painful part of this rebirth process for a solid 4 years. There were a lot of false starts during that time, as there always are when we're in the void, right? Little experiments where we step out and say, well, maybe it's this. And then we try that and it's like, nope, that wasn't it. Let me go back in the void. There are all these false starts. And then often, and in a really unexpected moment, something comes forward that is ready to be born. And for you, that something approached you in a bar. Tell us what happened.
Yeah. And I was in the void and now I'm surrendering. And I do want to say, to your point, Megan, that this surrender it's an energy. It's emotional. It's not physical. So I'm a mom. I have 2 kids. I have a family. So I was still doing physically things to support my family. And of course, I still had bills to pay. So it's not that I had the luxury to sit on my meditation cushion all day long and just be in the void. We're talking about an energy, right? We're talking about being there energetically than physically. And of course, as women, we have to go and do the things that we have to do to support our family and ourselves. But the part that you're talking about is listening to that still quiet voice among all that, cacophony of the voices that we hear inside of us. And that voice was telling me that, oh, I need a community right now. I need to go out. And this was while I was writing, and this is through the period of like 3 or 4 months. And another fun fact was that I was in the midst of writing a memoir. And in fact, I'd written almost 80 to 90% of it at that point. And I had to go back and start editing it. And I went back to this really core origin story of when my self-worth issues started. And I was so dysregulated in my nervous system that I could not go back into it. I was completely in a trauma response. And my home away from home is a freeze response. So I was completely numb, disassociated. Now I couldn't even write. So the only thing that my soul was telling me to do, to write, I couldn't even do that. And I was like, oops, this is not okay. This is wrong. Went back to therapy. And, one of the things that came up was that I really needed to be with people. I really needed community. I was like, how you said that when you go into it along with someone supporting you, it's much easier, right? And that was the whisper at that time that I was getting, is I need to get out. And I had heard from someone at a different gathering that there was a woman who announced to her community that she wanted to start a book club. She went to a bar and, a bunch of women came and she started a book club. And I was like, ooh, maybe I can do that. So I sent out an email in a local community email listserv that I want to start a writing group. And I'm going to be wearing a green shirt and I'll be at a bar at 7 p.m. on a Friday night or something like that. 2 people showed up. And we started having a conversation about the writing process. And we were all going through the same thing. We were not able to write because we were so dysregulated in our nervous system. And the conversation went from, starting a writing group to how can we become embodied writers? How can we write in a way that we feel safe in our bodies, that we don't feel disassociated, we don't feel numb, and we are able to write from that creative flow that we all love as writers, as creators. And one of the girls, she talked about, Deepshikha, have you heard about this nervous system work for artists based on polyvagal theory? And I was like, no, I haven't. And that led me down to a rabbit hole, and I discovered polyvagal work. And I was fascinated. And now I had words to describe what I was feeling. And I had words to describe why it was taking so long for me to come out of the void. And I started making the connections, and I ended up actually getting certified as a trauma therapist, nervous system practitioner. And I was like, wow, this is the missing piece in us writers. To come back to the first question you asked me, what happened to that book that you were writing? And that was 17 years ago. I didn't finish it. 97% of people who start a book do not finish it because of all that inner critic, of all the voices that we hear, the overwhelm, the procrastination. I can't do it. I don't have it in me, the self-doubt. I couldn't finish it. I had a lot of excuses. I became a mom. My husband used to travel, so I was a stay-at-home, full-time mom. But the fact is that I couldn't finish it because I didn't think that I had it in me to write a book. And if I knew what I know now, and if I had the tools that I had now, I probably would have been able to finish it. Again, that was a starting point in my life to point me towards where I am. But that led me to create what I am creating right now. It's called the Muse Master, which is basically a community for writers to become nervous system masters in our work, to be able to regulate ourselves so that we feel safe enough in our body, that we can write and be in that state of creative flow. Because as writers, we put our nervous system on the page all the time. Whether we are writing from a vulnerable moment or a memory or a trauma, or we are writing fiction and we have that fear of being published and, reading. I was at a residency last week and we were doing a reading, and one of the girls was like, I can do this. I can do this. This is so fearful. And I had to really go and help her and tell her that what you feel is, it's normal. Anytime when we are putting our inside outside, we're going to feel that we're being killed. We are in a state of survival. So, I think for me, the education, the self-awareness, and the shifting tools that, I can be dysregulated. I can be in a freeze response, but I can do the things that I know now to pull myself out of it so that I can look at my manuscript again. That has been life-changing. And all this to say, and I'm going to sound a little philosophical here, but I totally believe that there's a plan, right? There is a reason why we go into the void when we go, especially for us people who are looking for a purpose. And I feel like everything that I learned was so that I could understand this right now, that I needed to have nervous system literacy so that I could write and become an advocate for that.
I love this story so much. And what I want to make explicit is the way in which you didn't get the answer until you started living as the question. And living as a question has been a big part of the work that I've been doing for many years, right? This idea of like, how do I stop looking for the answer? How do I stop Googling? How do I stop giving money to people who tell me they can help me out of this, and learn to just exist in the world as the embodiment of the question that I have? And this is a great example of doing that. It's like you had this question, which was something around, why do we get stuck as writers? Why are we stuck? I'm stuck. Other people are stuck. Why do we get stuck? You know what? I'm just going to go to a bar. I'm going to throw out an invitation. Let's see who shows up, right? You didn't create this landing page that said, come to this event. We're going to brainstorm why we get stuck as writers. No, you just said, I have a question. I need community. I'm going to show up and see what happens. You were literally the living embodiment of the question. and you were there in your green shirt and these people show up, and then like magic, because it is magic, someone says, "Oh, hey, have you heard about such and such?" Bam, the answer arrives, right? The teacher arrives when the student is ready. And here was this beautiful moment where like the student, you were ready for the answer, and it was delivered to you with synchronicity and gentleness and curiosity. And then you grabbed onto it, and then you knew it, the deep inner knowing that says, yes, full steam ahead, pursue this path, get that certification. But it came from intuition. It came from your soul. It didn't come from your logical mind saying, well, one thing that you could try is to get certified in this or to get certified in that. No, it came from the bottom up. Your mind was the last to know that this was the path you were going to pursue. And now you're sitting with this beautiful idea, this beautiful business, the Muse Master, helping writers regulate their nervous system so they can tell their stories and do their work, which is so incredible. And the one guarantee here is that you have no idea how this is going to evolve over time. We don't know if Dee is still going to be doing the Muse Master a year from now. Maybe she is, maybe she's not. We have to let go of our attachments. We have to let go of this like fantasy of permanency in our businesses, like this fantasy that, oh, now I've arrived at the one idea that's going to be my big thing. You don't get to know that. You don't get to know that. And the harder you grip it, the more pressure you put on it, the faster that fizzy cup of water on the counter is going to go flat. So, final question here for you today. Like, how are you holding this balance, Dee, of both like honoring and celebrating the life and the energy behind the Muse Master right now without holding on too tightly to what you think it's going to become?
You know, that's such an interesting question. I'm actually not holding on to it at all. I am just letting it course through me. And it feels so different from any of the business ideas that I had first, because like you were saying, I wanted to hold on to it and I wanted to say, this is my big thing. This is what's going to make me the most money. And this is going to become viral or whatever. This to me is, it's coursing through my veins right now. And like you said, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be doing the Muse Master 1 year from now, 10 years from now. I don't know. What I do know is that I'm going to be using these skills for myself. And the more that I use it, the more excited I feel to share with others. And that's what happens when you learn something you want to share with others. And I want to learn more about it. And I want to be like, oh, I did this. And just, a short example, I was at a residency last week and I went back to those stories that I was not able to look at for the last 6 months, and I did them. And there were some moments where I did feel dysregulated and I did a few exercises. And I came back and I told my writing group, which, by the way, those 2 girls and me, we still meet every week and
Oh,
our
wow.
books. And it's become the most special group I have ever been in. We're just 3 people, but we are so close and it's so special. And I shared it with them, and they said, we are going to use it too. And that's what matters to me right now. That's what matters, that, if I can share that one thing that worked with me, that made me write, that made me pursue the thing that, oh my goodness, Maegan, I've been wanting to do for so long. I was at a chiropractor a few months ago, and we were in the middle of like fixing my back, and he's like, what do you do? And I said, I'm a writer. And he paused and he's like, how long did that take you to say that so confidently?
Oh, yeah. Great question.
Right. And I was like, 40 years. It took me 40 years.
You're like, this is my first time, actually.
It took me 40 years to really say that, this is who I want to be, because it really fulfills me. It really, really fills me up. And totally understanding that that's not who I am.
Right.
Right. So it feels like a full circle from that woman who wanted to create a business, because she wanted to create an identity for herself, to now, because I'm not holding on to it. And I don't know where this will lead. All I know is that I am so interested in this, and I would share this with anyone who would listen to me.
Thank you so much for that wisdom. And just to really make this super practical, You're not jumping in and paying $15,000 for someone to like do a branding kit for you and make you a website. You're not creating fancy sales pages and investing a bunch of money and like getting into a new coaching program. If you're listening, this is what I want you to hear right now, that we're conditioned to think that if we have a really good idea, we better jump on it fast, right? That's late stage capitalism for you that just says like, oh, if you got a good idea, you better jump on and you better make as much money from it, exploit it in every way you possibly can before someone else steals your idea. And then we start investing so much and then we get like the sunk cost, right? Then it's like we feel like we have to keep going because we've, quote, wasted so much money. I mean, it's such a common experience. I've been there. I know so many people who have been there. And that's the old way. That's the old way. And what Deepshikha, the picture that you're painting for us, I feel so much more ease in my body, so much more peace, which is, you know what? I don't know where this is going to go. And I'm not holding on to it at all. In fact, the only thing I have right now is a Substack where I'm going to talk about it, right? And I'm just going to share and I'm just going to see where it takes me. It just makes me exhale a big breath. And I just want to invite everyone listening, like whatever is coursing through your veins right now, whatever has you feeling fizzy and alive, if anything, just let it come through you without trying to force it to exist in the world in any certain capacity. That feels like such incredible wisdom, Dee. Thank you for sharing
You're
that.
so,
Is there
so
anything
welcome.
else you want to say about any of this before we wrap up?
Well, you said everything beautifully, and I'm just going to add that the more we hold on to it, I think that's my biggest lesson. The more we hold on to our incredible ideas, because those ideas are incredible and they are straight from the divine. But the more we hold on tightly to it, the faster it escapes from us.
Yep.
So everything that Maegan said, I'm gonna just reflect the same back at everyone who's listening. And trust yourself, trust those ideas, trust your destiny, trust. And I think, what if we can just lean into this, that everything is actually happening for me, and at the same time, oh my goodness, it fucking sucks.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard. Well, and what's hard is when we are trying to force ourselves to fit into a particular box. That's what's hard. When I'm trying to make my business look like the coach told me it needs to look like, or when I'm trying to make 7 figures because someone told me that I can, when I'm in the performative, people-pleasing parts of my identity, life is hard. Business is hard. But when we step back, when we allow ourselves to do this scary work of going into the void, when we learn how to let ideas flow through us, how to release our grip on them, how to go along for the ride, bam, ease. Then we're in the flow of ease. And there are challenging moments, and there are still ways that we have to put effort in to bring them forward, but it doesn't have to be so hard. That's what I'm here for. Like, I'm here for the ease. I'm here for like working, co-creating with the universe and feeling that my work gets to be playful and gentle and easeful. That's what I want to create. And that's where I'm feeling so incredibly inspired by you, Dee, and your journey since we met in 2020, and the way that I've been able to witness the Muse Master come forward in this organic and easeful way. I just am learning so much from you, and I can't wait to participate in the Muse Master offerings. I can't wait for everybody to learn more about the work that you are doing right now at this moment in time. So could you please tell us where we can learn more about you and the Muse Master?
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much, Maegan. And, I am equally inspired by you, and with the incredible vulnerability and strength that you share your journey with your people, and you've shared that with me. It's truly inspiring, and it gives me strength to be in the void again and again. So thank you for having me. Thank you for being such an incredible friend. As of now, the Muse Master we're still in the process of, creating it and dreaming about it. So like Maegan said, join us on Substack. That's where I'm going to be talking about it. In the future, we are going to have some workshops, some retreats, some community work that you can totally be a part of. And, if you're a writer, you love to write. And I totally believe that all of us have a story. And if you want to tickle that side of your soul, then come join us.
Well, I don't want to tickle any part of me, to be clear, but I do want to write with you. Okay, Deepshikha's newsletter, you can subscribe at the musemaster.substack.com. I will put that in the show notes. Dee, such an honor to have you. I hope that you will be a recurring guest on the Deeply Rested podcast. We have so much to discuss, but we will close this chapter for now.
Thank you so much for having me, Maegan. Such a delight.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Deeply Rested. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would love to invite you to join the Deeply Rested weekly newsletter. You can sign up at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. I hope to meet you in my inbox very soon.